January 15th, 2021 marked the release of Thomas North's 1555 travel journal, From Italy to Shakespeare. The authors contend that North used the experiences he documented in his travel diary to help him write early versions of his very first plays, Henry VIII and The Winter's Tale, plays Shakespeare would adapt for the public stage more than 50 years later. For example, in his entries for June 10th and 12th, North described a pair of striking events. One, the Pope sitting in his consistory. North even detailed the seating arrangements. And two, very detailed row-by-row depiction of a procession of cardinals, complete with the ceremonial objects being carried before them. These remarkable visions are rarely witnessed by anyone other than people who happen to be in Rome and have a front row seat to the ceremonies for a newly elected pope, as did Thomas North. In fact, the scenes are so rare that it appears no other known work in history also juxtaposes a detailed description of a cardinal procession with the seating arrangements of a consistory, except for Shakespeare's Henry VIII. This is a just believe your eyes moment. The passages are clearly related. Just notice the phrases introducing each row of marchers: after them, next them with, then, after them. Consider the first section. The two vergers with silver wands corresponds to the two officers with silver rods. A mitre is a bishop's hat, which links to the cardinal's hat. Note, carrying each of them and bearing each both have follows or followed. Finally, then introduces the cross being borne before cardinals. Here's the next section. After the crosses comes the pillars. Although North uses borne before himself while the playwright uses bearing, in an earlier stage direction, the playwright even writes cardinal borne before him. Finally, both works also describe a consistory with the lords in the court. Both focus on the seating arrangements with the pope or king in a high chair in the center and the cardinals and bishops underneath them and on the side. Of course, no one else has similarly juxtaposed a description of a consistory with the court and the lords, along with cardinals with pillars. In fact, just these introductory phrases represent North's unique verbal fingerprint. Just this. You can forget everything else about cardinals, pillars, consistories, etc. No one else has ever written something like this. You can check this now yourself on Google by typing in after them, in quotes, around 30, next them with, in quotes. This searches for every webpage, book, blog, article, etc., everything on the internet which has after them within 30 words of next them with. As you will see, and as shown here, every result is quoting either Henry VIII or North's journal. And you can search Google Books too. That's trillions of web pages, 40 million Google Books, no other results. And this is not the only scene from the play that North's journal inspired. The supposed international banquet where the ambassadors could not speak the language of the beautiful hostesses, and the women spectators of Anne's coronation who transform into the raucous costumed women of an Italian carnival. These also derive from North's experiences in Italy. North's journal is necessarily linked to these scenes in Henry VIII. But is it possible that Shakespeare got a hold of this diary and then tried to reproduce North's experiences? No, we have proof that this can't be the case. Before North compiled his writings into the extant journal, he used 3 history books to help him add information to his entries. These are the citations for some of the passages that North used in the diary, and these are also the exact same source passages used in Henry VIII. And this last part is well known. Scholars and editors have long recognized these passages as the original inspiration for various scenes in the history play. It is just that no one ever knew that North had first used these passages for his journal. Even assuming Shakespeare had access to North's journal, he couldn't possibly know what source passages North had used to help him write his entries. North wrote Henry VIII, focusing on the falls of Catherine and Wolsey not long after he returned to England. This also helps explain why we find other passages in the play that derive from other writings of North. Here is an example of Wolsey's warnings about those who aspire to creep into the bosom and favor of the king. This is clearly following the language of similar warnings from 2 of North's translations, The Dial of Princes and Moral Philosophy of Donny. This borrowing is also indisputable. Both passages are in the hateful heart and spleen of elder gossips, and both of the accused defend themselves in exactly the same way. In North's style, "Truly, sir, I never uttered or devised word that might be to the prejudice of any." And Wolsey in Henry VIII, "Most gracious sir, please you to declare whether ever I spake one the least word that might be to the prejudice of her present state." The borrowing is undeniable. No one else in the history of the English language, not before or since, has ever written word that might be to the prejudice of. No one but North or Shakespeare. We even know why North chose Wolsey as the subject of his first play, focusing on his extravagance and corruption, which led to his downfall. North's father, Edward, First Lord North, had written an epic poem on Wolsey's corruption, leading to Edward's jailing for more than a year. Edward's poem even makes the same accusations against Wolsey. In Henry VIII, North took the writings and events of his life at that time and put it in his play. And we can now show that North continued to do the same thing year after year, play after play, for every work in the Shakespeare canon.